All right, so let's go ahead and look at how to install Flutter on Windows. Unfortunately, the process of installing Flutter right now, be it on Windows or Mac or Linux, it's a little bit cumbersome. Hopefully later, since this is still on beta, which means they're still working on this framework, hopefully later they will have a better way for us to install. But this is what we have right now, and we should endure the pain for a bit. It's not that bad. I shouldn't start with that. In any case, because Flutter allows us to build iOS and Android applications, that means there's a lot of dependencies. There's a lot of things that we need to account for. So if you are using a Mac, in order to run on iOS, you will have to have Xcode. That's very easy to go. You can just look online and say Xcode download. You can download Xcode, and it's very easy to put together. Now, if you are on Windows, there are other ways in which you can actually run Hackintosh and all these different ways to run Mac. I won't go over that, as since there's a lot of information you can find online for yourself. So if you're on Windows and you're interested in running iOS applications, right, you have to have Mac OS installed running on your computer. That said, either way, if you're Mac or on Windows, you will have to have Android Studio installed. The reason why is because Flutter relies heavily on the Android Studio SDK, because as we build those applications, rely on the Android SDK. This is the reason why we had to download Android Studio in previous videos. Right, so I know this is a little bit lengthy and you may say, oh, this is too much work, but bear with me. Once we've done this, then you're going to be set for life in terms of not having to do this over and over again. All right, so once we point our browser to flutter.io, you can see here, we can go ahead and say get started. And here we go. Okay. Also, I would like you to rely heavily on this page where they show you how to do installations, because this is Google, this is what they do, this is their platform framework. So, of course, they have better tools, better ways to lead you through the process, better than I can ever actually emulate. So, I'll go over with you so that you have an understanding, but I want you to really rely on this. Okay, perfect. So let's start with Windows. So you go to install on Windows, and let's go ahead and start reading through what's going on here. So the first thing it says, we need to have, there's system requirements. Okay, it says operating system has to be at least minimum Windows 7 SP1 or later with 64-bit. Okay, we are in 2018 now, so you should really strive for 64-bit always. It also gives us the disk space. It says we at least have to have a 400 megabytes, and I'm sure most of you already have that done. Okay, and the tools we need is going to be PowerShell or newer, and then the most important one, we have to have this Git for Windows. So now if you right click this and go to the next link, you'll notice that it's going to start downloading our Git.exe for Windows. I'm on a Mac here right now, so this won't work for me. But once this is done, you just double click, it's an executable file, and we'll install Git for you. That's very important for us to really set up Flutter using Git from the Windows command prompt. Now, if you already, like I said here, if you already have Git installed, you can just go open command prompt or PowerShell. Right? If you don't know what PowerShell is, then you don't have it, or you don't know that you have it. That's totally fine. You just go to CMD, so command prompt on Windows, and then type Git. If you do that and all works fine, then you have it. All right. If not, just go what we did here. Click on this install executable, and it will install everything. Once you're done, you can go back and just type Git, and then you're gonna see all the goodness, which will tell you that you have indeed installed. All right, so then we get to the fun part. So it says get the Flutter SDK. So what you need to do, obviously, is to click on this Flutter Windows beta. So click in this zip file, will download. You're going to be able to extract the zip file and place the contained Flutter folder in the desired installation location for the Flutter SDK. Now, this is very important. You have to find somewhere on your disk or where you're going to put this folder, because that is where it's going to live. If you put somewhere where you won't remember, somewhere, let's say in a folder that you will easily delete it, that would be really bad, because once you delete this folder, which has all the Flutter, the same dependencies and libraries, then you won't have Flutter in your machine. So that's not a good thing. All right. And the next thing what we're going to do is, of course, locate the file flutterconsole.bat inside the Flutter directory. Now, once you've done all this, you should have everything set up for you. Now, the thing that you need to also account for is that we need to update the path in order for us to have Flutter in our computer path, which means it will be forever on our machine. So we need to do that. To do that, you go to Control Panel, User Accounts, and you need to change the environment. Okay, so for all of this, it may be a little bit confusing at first, but I found a nice video online that a good gentleman goes through this process of installing, of setting up the path, installing, and everything. So all of these that we've talked about, now he succinctly goes through the process of doing that, and I'll have the video in a second here. Okay, once you do all of stuff, it says here to reboot and then run Flutter Doctor. Flutter Doctor will just go ahead and make sure that you have all the dependencies and everything is ready. Now, once you run the Doctor, it's going to tell you exactly what has been installed. As an example here, if this is your first time, you will probably have something like this, right? And so we'll give you information now how to install other parts so that we are able to have a full installation of Flutter. And now this is very important. It says Android setup. This is why I told you, this is why we had to go through the process of installing Android Studio and download all the SDKs and everything. Because, like I said, Flutter relies on a full installation of Android Studio to supply its Android platform dependencies, right? Like I said again, however, you can write your Flutter apps in a number of editors. So you notice that we installed IntelliJ. You can install other available IDE or text editors, right? So you don't have to use Android Studio. Okay. So again, if you missed the previous video where to install, you can just right click here, go to Android Studio. And the cool thing about Android Studio, as of now, is 3.1.1, right? So whenever you go here, depending on when you're watching this video, always come here and install the latest. This is what it says, 3.1.1. By the time you are watching, you want to download this, maybe 3.1.2 or 3.2. It doesn't matter. Every time you come here, whatever it's available here in green, that's the one that you want to install, download, and install. The process of downloading and install is all the same. So in the previous video, it may have looked a little bit different numbers here, but it's the same thing. So just go here, in this link here, like I showed you, click here and follow the instructions. Easy. So once you have Android Studio, you can go to Android Studio, go to Tools, it says AVD, a manager, and select Create a Virtual Device. So in the previous video, I showed you how to create a virtual device on Android Studio. So we need to create via Android Studio, not because we want to use Android Studio, although we can to create our Flutter applications, right? Because Android Studio is the base that has all of the dependencies that we need to use with Flutter to create Flutter Android applications. So this is a very important document, and I really urge you to go through this and read through and just follow the instructions. It's not too bad. So like I said, there is already an amazing video that I found online that really goes into details. So it's kind of like a supplement to what all that we have here, but in a visual form, so you can go through and follow that. It's fairly simple, and I'm very confident that you can do. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to play the video so you can go through and you can see how all of this is done.
Hey there, today we will learn about Flutter, Google's newest SDK, and also how to go about installing it in Windows. First, go to Flutter's website, click on Install on Windows, and copy the line that I'm copying. Open the C drive, right click, and click on Git Bash here. If you do not see that option there, you do not have Git installed on your computer. Install that and then continue. Once you've opened Git Bash, paste the line that we had copied earlier. Once the cloning is done, you can see the Flutter folder in the C drive. Go inside this folder, go into bin, and copy the path to this folder. Go to this PC, right click and click on Properties. Go to Advanced System Settings and click on Environment Variables. Click on the variable path and click on edit. Click on new and paste the paths that we had copied earlier. Go to command prompt. This can be done by typing cmd or command prompt in the Windows search bar. Type the command Flutter Doctor. This will install the Flutter SDK and all the important components needed for Flutter. This might take a while. In the end, you'll see the Doctor summary. That is a list of 4 items. The first one is Flutter, which was just installed. The second one is the Android SDK, and the third one is the Android Studio. If you don't have Android Studio or the Android SDK installed, go and do that first. The fourth item in the list is connected devices. Since I don't have any connected device right now, it doesn't have the tick next to the option. Next time you run Flutter Doctor, it'll run it much faster and it'll show you the list of 4 items. Now open Android Studio and click on File and Settings. Go to the Plugins section and click on Browse Repositories. Search for Flutter and click the green install button that you see below it. Click on Restart Studio, as this will make the necessary changes for the newest plugin. As you can see, there is an option to start a new Flutter project. Select it. Select Flutter application and click Next. Change the project name. I'm going to name it First Flutter App. Since this is the first time we're running a Flutter project, we need to tell Studio where the Flutter SDK is. So we do this by going into the C drive and selecting the Flutter folder. After the project is compiled, you can run it either on an external device or the virtual device that Android Studio provides you with. This is how the application will look when you run it for the first time.
Alright, and there you have it. Okay, so now you have this whole document here where you can go through and install, and of course the video that I just showed you where it goes through the whole process of doing it. Okay, now the main key points here is that you have to have the Git, as we said here, the PowerShell or Git for Windows. Install that in order for you to be able to do all the command prompt thing that you saw in the video. It's very important. And also, this is very important, you should have Android Studio installed on your machine, and also at least one AVD or emulator created, right? Virtual device created. That would make your life much easier. In fact, you should do that first. In the video, you notice that they were actually creating the first app using Android Studio. Like I said, you can of course use Android Studio to create Flutter apps, but in this course I'm going to be using IntelliJ, another IDE, integrated development environment, which is also the base for Android Studio. But in any case, the tools that we're using to build Flutter apps doesn't really matter. So you can use Android Studio to build this app, as you saw, or you can use IntelliJ, which is the IDE we're going to be using, or you can even use, I think is, let's see here, like they say here, there's so many tools configured. Let's go next. Android Studio, of course, you can use IntelliJ Community or Ultimate. Of course, IntelliJ Community is free. That's what we're going to be using. And you can use the VS Code, which is Visual Studio Code, which is another wonderful IDE. But in all of those, you have to install it as a plugin, just like you saw on the video. Okay, so you got a few options, but like I said, I'm going to be using IntelliJ as we build Android and iOS applications using Flutter. So if you're the beginner, I would keep with IntelliJ or following exactly what I use. That way there's no confusion. Otherwise, you can use whatever you would like. So I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out. And yes, you have all these tools, all of this information here that you have to successfully install Flutter on Windows. Okay, perfect. I'll see you next.